What is up, sports fans? What is up, Seattle Mariners fans? Wow, what another week it has been. The Mariners dealing with more injuries, but somehow, some way, still clawing out wins, still at the top of the AL West in first place. Two key offensive players down in the last couple of days, one pitcher over the weekend as well, but you got a bunch of wins in your back pocket. Another series win for the Mariners against the Los Angeles Angels. Just so much, I would say a lot of positive to talk about while kind of highlighting some negative stuff. But even still, through the negative, through the adversity, the Mariners just keep on fighting. Welcome on into another episode of Bleav In Mariners. I'm Jordon Schultz, also known as Schultzy, a Pacific Northwest talk show host based out of Portland, Oregon. Normally work on Sports Radio 1080 The Fan. Love doing this podcast about my Seattle Mariners for Bleav. I bleed teal green just like the rest of y'all. And trust me, this weekend, man, I would say that there was no more captivating team than baseball to watch than the Seattle freaking Mariners. I know that there were a couple of teams that went off, scored some runs, kind of forced it's fun when you get that big gap in runs by the end of the game. Saw like 2 or 3 different games with position players pitching over the weekend, but man, the Mariners just continuing to win series after series. I Bleav it's 6 series in a row now after the sweep of the Angels, and we'll get into a lot of the good here as the Mariners continue to hold that lead in the AL West in first place, tell you how many wins they're on pace for, but I think we got to start with the bad. So a lot of injuries, as I mentioned, happening over the weekend. We'll get into the main issues that the team is having with the 3 guys that are on the IL and how they're going to replace them. Unfortunately, Luke Raley, the latest one to go as I tape this on Wednesday, April 30th, go on the IL. Actually, the day of taping, unfortunately, with a right oblique strain. He was scratched from the lineup for game 1 against the Angels on Tuesday, the 29th, and unfortunately, because of this right oblique strain that reportedly happened while he was taking a swing in batting practice long before the game, it's going to put him down for a long time, at least 6 weeks, according to Shannon Dreyer. Essentially 6 weeks just of recovery time, and that means that rehab is going to be after that. So we're talking at least 6 weeks, probably 2 months-ish, maybe more for Luke Raley. And I know he wasn't hitting well, but I've mentioned it a couple of times here on the program. He has been one of the unluckiest hitters in baseball. Maybe a week and a half ago, he should have been batting about 100 points higher than what he was, just because of where he was hitting the ball and hitting the ball hard, but just right at fielders, and Parks not really being friendly to where he was hitting it on that particular day. So he kind of figured that eventually his average was going to get up there. He had a great season last year, career year, not necessarily expecting him to replicate it, but he's a professional hitter. He fights, and he still was getting walks and actually had a beautiful outfield assist over the weekend as well, throwing a runner out at home plate before he went down with that injury. So Luke Raley going to be missed, a major blow. And frankly, even though he hasn't been good, he's kind of one of those few lefty power threats. And even though he has been down filling in for right field for the injured Victor Robles, so is kind of filling that gap at first base right now, too, with Rowdy Tellez. Donovan Solano, getting a couple of hits. His average, I think, is up to $150. It was his first 2-hit game of the season for their win against the Angels on Wednesday, April 30th. But you know what? I don't have much confidence in him. So sucks to see Luke Raley go down. Obviously now Rowdy Tellez going to need to get more at-bats at first base, basically the lefty power option now, instead of Luke Raley able to get at-bats there. And one guy that was pushing Luke Raley into first base, basically giving him the ability to get at-bats, especially since Victor Robles went down playing right field, that would be Dylan Moore, of course, the AL Player of the Week last week. He went down a couple of days ago with some right hip inflammation, also on the 10-day injured list. Man, he has just been so nails for the Mariners all freaking season. It really sucks to see a guy that has been hitting probably the best in his career. At one point was tied for the major league lead for homers against left-handed pitchers. Like Dylan Moore has given the Mariners just way more than you expected and everything they needed with the lack of players that they acquired this offseason, and kind of stabilize that offense along with Jorge Polanco and along with a couple of guys we'll get to here in a second. But, the reigning Gold Glove winner at the utility player position, it's just really, really crappy that in the middle of all this, the Mariners, once again, we'll get to how they're fighting through adversity, but still losing one of their best players, I would say, on the roster defensively. And not the last 2 years, but lately, he's been one of their best hitters as well. And you hate to see when guys are hot and they go down, but unfortunately, that's what's happening in the case of Dylan Moore, not so much with Luke Raley. But the good news about Dylan Moore, Raley expected to miss at least 6 weeks, probably closer to 2 months plus. Moore, he will be back relatively soon. The stint on the IL was actually retroactive, I Bleav, to the 26th of April, and that means he could potentially return against the Athletics down in Sacramento when the Mariners are on the road. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe he got like a rehab appearance or two in Tacoma just to make sure he's feeling right, and then he rejoins the team when the Mariners come back home for a little 6-game stand against the Blue Jays and Yankees. You're definitely going to need him for that. But yeah, Dylan Moore and Luke Raley both going down in just a period of a couple of days. Really frustrating for Mariners fans, but Mariners still fighting out wins. And even after a much bigger blow, Logan Gilbert going down over the weekend as well, unfortunately was pulled from his start early because of forearm tightness in his throwing arm. That's not good news. That's actually the start to several injuries that lead to Tommy John surgery for starting pitchers. So you really don't even want to hear any forearm tightness kind of an injury, especially from one of your aces. But Logan Gilbert has been pitching super well up to that point, obviously, 2.37 ERA with 44 strikeouts and just a .79 whip. But you know what? Didn't matter, at least for that one start that he missed, because Logan freaking Evans came in Sunday and had an unbelievable debut against the Miami Marlins. What a start for this kid. 5 innings. He gave up a couple of earned runs, but struck out 3, got out of some critical situations. And man, the bend on his breaking pitches looks good, and he can dot that fastball. To me, already looked like a pretty comfortable major league starting pitcher. Just kind of gives me more faith in that Mariners pitching lab that, wow, once again, same situation that they had to bring Brian Wu up under, same situation that I Bleav they had to bring George Kirby up under when a player that they've depended on to be their starter for the year goes down. All of a sudden, you've got these young guys ready to take over. And Logan Evans becomes like the third freaking one or the fourth freaking one in the last handful of years for the Seattle Mariners. So unfortunate to see Logan Gilbert going down, but taken over by another Logan Evans in the rotation. So not as concerned about that. And I would assume we're seeing George Kirby getting ramped up. He was throwing 95 miles an hour. And I think just like a bullpen session that he did at T-Mobile Park, rejoining the team this last week. So you would think maybe in the next 2 to 3 weeks, or even according to some comments by Justin Hollander, that is at least, I'd say, a reasonable timetable to expect him to return. And then you kind of have a hard option because Emerson Hancock in the Mariners win on Wednesday over the Angels, completing that little mini 2-game sweep for the series. He lowered his ERA down to 6.62, gave up 3 earned runs in 6 innings of work, struck out 4, only walked 2, and fought through a pretty rough day at times. I think Emerson Hancock, after that first start where he got blown up early in the year, filling in for George Kirby, has absolutely turned it around. He actually came through with those breaking pitches that he added, the movement, as well as a couple of miles an hour to his fastball. The dude actually is looking like the pitcher we thought he could be, filling in for George Kirby. So it's kind of hard to send him down. You kind of wonder if Bryce Miller, who actually had a pretty decent game, not his best game, but a decent game against the Angels on Tuesday, went 5 innings and threw 6 strikeouts, 5 walks, though. That was because his back reportedly tightened up before the game, and fighting through that, still was able to get the win. And unbelievable performance, not only through that 5 innings on Tuesday, but there's just been a couple of other games where it just didn't look like he had it, didn't look like the feel was there, but Bryce Miller was able to fight and at least keep the Mariners in it. So they're going to have a hard decision here pretty soon once George Kirby comes off the injured list. But unfortunately, Logan Gilbert, another starter, going down, and the Mariners kind of have to play a little bit more of juggling, basically, with the game of juggling, with the bullpen and maybe with a starting pitcher or two once you see George Kirby come back from the injured list. Kind of getting concerned, maybe Casey Legumina not necessarily looking as sharp as I'd want him to. Yeah, he got out of a situation on Wednesday for this win today that I'm taping the episode against the Angels, and got himself into trouble first a couple of times. And Trent Thornton, I know he's not necessarily very favorable with fans right now, giving up a lot of home runs late in games. You wonder if maybe he's going to be an option to send down, because at this point, yeah, the Mariners are looking a little bit better on the starting pitching side of things, but with this injury to Logan Gilbert, just kind of continues to force Pete Woodworth and Dan Wilson to juggle things and call players up. Maybe Saucedo will be back up after a break. Casey Lawrence, who was designated for assignment once again, was claimed off of waivers by the Blue Jays. And then, I think a day or two after that, was designated for assignment again by the Blue Jays. Maybe the Mariners will go back to him, throw him back in the bullpen for a night. So there's going to be a couple of more fresh faces in the bullpen, no doubt, unfortunately. Troy Taylor, speaking of how the Mariners are going to fill in for Logan Gilbert, other than Logan Evans, kind of picking and choosing guys that they want to put in that bullpen. Taylor looked pretty decent, actually, in a late inning appearance on that Wednesday win. I know he got blown up earlier this year, sent down. Basically, I would say he's just still kind of struggling coming back from injury, but he actually looked like he had a lot better command on the ball, and I was much more confident with him on the mound in the ninth inning. I know the game was basically already in hand, a 6-run lead, but you got to give the kid a comfortable spot, and it looks like he was able to settle in. So I think we'll see the Troy Taylor of 2024 very soon, hopefully not seeing him get sent down again. Essentially, too, along with this injury to Logan Gilbert, I was saying that Raley and Moore kind of force your hand on the offensive side of things, looking for players. You got Rylan Thomas that was called up to make his major league debut. Once he appears in a game, he will make his debut. He's a high contact guy, was batting over 300 down at Tacoma this season, has, I think, 10 home runs in his entire minor league career, which he's 25 years old, so obviously not a power guy, but he's really fast, got great speed, good defense, and like I said, down at Tacoma was hitting the ball well, so kind of making it hard for the brass not to call him up. Looks like a much better option than Dominic Canzone, who, yeah, he also kind of just came off the injured list. Bleav he's been fighting a strained oblique or something like that as well. So you kind of wonder why the Mariners didn't go to Canzone to replace Raley on the roster instead of going to Rylan Thomas. Frankly, I think the Mariners hopefully are done with Dominic Canzone. He looks like a 4A player to me. Guy succeeds, hits homers in AAA, but once he gets up to the bigs, looks like pitchers have him figured out, and it looks like they know exactly what his approach is going to be. So really don't want to see Dominic Canzone up here. Love that they gave a shot to Rylan Thomas. Not sure how long he's going to be on the roster, though. They also called Samad Taylor up in lieu of the Dylan Moore injury. I love that they called Samad Taylor up, and he actually started in that Wednesday win for the Mariners, getting a hit. And, I mean, that bunt for a hit, kind of creating some havoc on the base paths as well as he did that, essentially pushing Rivas. And we'll talk about Leo Rivas here in just a second, because I think the Mariners, frankly, I mean, I know I said this about Ryan Bliss, but I wasn't expecting to say this about Leo Rivas. I think the Seattle Mariners might have found their new second baseman. This kid just keeps on hitting. But Samad Taylor, a lot of Mariners fans were wondering why he wasn't up on the roster. And frankly, with his speed, with his ability to make things happen on the base paths, and I do know that he can swing the bat. Hasn't really looked good in a couple of strikeouts, or the strikeout today that he had, and then another at bat. Didn't really look good with his approach, but I know that he can hit, and I'm excited to see what he can do, at least for the next week or so. You kind of wonder who's going to be sent back down once Dylan Moore gets off the injured list, whether it be Thomas or Samad Taylor. I think, hey, 3 utility guys on the roster: Samad Taylor, Miles Mastrobuoni, Dylan Moore. At this point, that's not a bad thing. And of course, the Mariners have made moves for, getting guys from within the organization, but there are still some holes to fill. Unfortunately, you can't roll out Miles Mastrobuoni in right field all the time. You might be able to roll Leo Rivas out at second base, maybe push Dylan Moore out to right field, but Still leaves you a hole at first base, unfortunately. Rowdy Tellez and Donovan Solano are not hitting worth S. So what do? Justin Hollander says they are looking at outside options, examining the market. I don't know if that means they are going to trade for somebody at this point. The trade market in MLB really doesn't start to heat up until the end of May anyway. So they're a little early, for teams that are wanting to jettison talent. But hell, maybe they could call the Colorado Rockies, who were just absolute ass. They could ask about Ryan McMahon. He hasn't had a great start to the year. Play him at first base. Former number 1 overall pick, Mickey Moniak. You could throw him out in right field. Jordan Beck, a young outfielder. He's had a decent season so far. I don't know. You can call the White Sox, who are also total crap, about Luis Robert. I don't know who's going to take the call at this point for the Mariners. You could look at the free agent market. Anthony Rizzo, Whit Merrifield are out there. Both of those names sound absolutely awful, though. But I think they might be available at a bargain, right? And the Mariners have that fetish with the bargain bin. So I don't know. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they went with some aging veteran like that on a minimum deal, or another fringe big leaguer kind of just getting released by another team. The Mariners pick him up just like they did with Victor Robles. Last year was that is not a situation that's going to happen again, though. That is such a lucky freaking just pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that the Mariners found in Victor Robles. I do not expect other guys getting DFA'd like that to just show up in Seattle, a park, and play in a park notoriously hard to hit in, and act like Victor Robles did. I think Victor Robles is a special story, and they got lucky, and thank God they did get Victor Robles. But I'm just not sure there's anybody out there on the market that's going to come in and make the same impact that they did in 2024 this year in 2025. And you can't depend on that. I know Jerry DiPoto hoped a 9-way parlay would hit at the beginning of the season, but you just can't depend on that. I know a few fans have been mentioning a guy like Jared Kelnick, who had a really crappy start to the season with the Braves, obviously involved in that controversy where he didn't run out, essentially a single off the wall that he thought was a home run, and then got thrown out at second base trying to get a double. And because he didn't hustle, made himself look like an ass. And yeah, kind of falling out of favor in Atlanta. I'm sure Seattle would take him back, give him a few at-bats. Is that a legit option that Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander are thinking of? I don't know, but the Mariners roster most likely going to continue to be in flux over the next few weeks. Going to get Dylan Moore back soon, but on top of already missing Ryan Bliss and Victor Robles, you are missing Dylan Moore, you're missing Luke Raley, and you're freaking missing Logan Gilbert as well. But despite all that, the Mariners are still freaking winning baseball games. Let's get into the good stuff. Specifically, this little 2-game mini-series sweep that the Mariners had over the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim in California, next to Disneyland, as I like to call them. I know the Angels have lost 7 of the last 8. Ron Washington just doesn't look like he's having a good time managing that team. They had to remove Mike Trout after he ran out a ground ball at first base in that Wednesday loss. Looked like, I don't know, it was maybe a hamstring issue or a hip issue or something like that, but he came out the 3rd inning. So hopefully Mike Trout is okay. You really hate to see that. So demoralizing for the Angels, but your first place, Seattle Mariners, folks. Yes, 18-2 after that little 2-game series win over the Angels. As I tape this, they have a 2-game lead over both the Astros and the Texas Rangers, both sitting at 16-14 in the AL West. I would say that is exactly, at least for the Astros and Rangers, exactly where Vegas had predicted they would be. The Mariners playing above their station. They're looking at 95 wins. At least they're on pace for that at this point. So good for Seattle, getting it done against the Angels and getting it done in mad style. We talked a little bit about Bryce Miller in that first game, having, a start that wasn't necessarily one of his better ones, but having to pitch through some back pain that we found out about later and looking really resilient. And I do kind of feel like that is the theme of this team, as I'll get to here in a second. Definitely resilience for sure. But other guys that helped the Mariners get that 5-3 win over the Angels, well, really just one on offense, and that was Jorge Polanco, absolutely going freaking nuclear. 2 bombs, 5 runs batted in. He now has 4 home runs and 11 RBIs in his last 7 games. Absolutely locked in. He had a pinch hit appearance on Wednesday in the win. The bases were loaded. Everybody was hoping for that grand salami. Didn't quite come through with it, though. Basically popped out trying to get a big swing off, and that's okay. But Polanco has been absolute nails for the Mariners, and congrats to Jorge Polanco winning AL Player of the Week. Him winning it back-to-back with Dylan Moore marks the first time that two Mariners have won the AL Player of the Week award back-to-back since 1998 when Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex freaking Rodriguez won it. How about that? Yeah, the Mariners are having some crazy performances on offense right now, and Jorge Polanco, even after getting named AL Player of the Week, going nuclear in that win that the Mariners had over the Angels. 5-3 the final. Thank goodness for Andres Munoz coming in, still perfect on save opportunities. 11 for 11, 0.00 ERA through 15 appearances. Absolutely elite. Looking to be an all-star at this point, possibly the best reliever in all of baseball. And what a great performance by basically everybody for the Mariners in their Game 2 win over the Angels, 9-3 the final. Not only did Emerson Hancock, we talked a little bit about it earlier, keep him in the game, 6 innings, only allowed 3 runs, had a pretty strong performance, 4 strikeouts in that as well, lowering his ERA to now under 7. But along with that, basically everybody at the plate making a difference. And you love to see this. Like, the strikeout numbers were lower. 6 strikeouts. They were 5 for 12 with runners in scoring position. Only left 6 runners on base. And J.P. Crawford going 2 of 4 for the game. Randy Arozarena going 2 for 4 in the game. Donovan Solano had his first multi-hit game of the season going 2 for 3. And then Leo Rivas, he just will not stop. 3 of 4. 367 batting average on the season and another 3 RBIs. I mean, Leo Rivas, I think he is the starting second baseman at this point because you don't want to keep shuffling at every single position. You got your utility guys, but man, since Ryan Bliss went down, you kind of haven't really had anybody to hold up the trident at that position. Thankfully, with Dylan Moore down, with Simon Taylor and Miles Mastrobuoni handling utility guy duties, you've got a regular second baseman that you can throw in and expect that he's going to fight hard and he's going to get on base and he's going to have good at bats. Leo Rivas absolutely succeeding, kind of part of this resilient attitude that I think the Mariners team has. Unfortunately, Ben Williamson, an 0 for 4 day, his batting average down to 260, but not surprising. Baseball is a game of adjustments, right? He came in, looked like he was setting the world on fire against these major league pitchers. Well, teams started watching video on him and figured out, okay, maybe here's how we get him out, and now he's going to have to make the next adjustment. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. And Randy Arozarena, of course, in that 2 of 4 day, hit his 5th bomb of the season, raising his average up slightly. Julio Rodriguez also raising his average up slightly, 1 for 5 in that performance on Wednesday, but hitting 207 overall, and actually an RBI as well, actually looking like he is comfortable at the plate, showing some signs of heating up in the last 7 games or so. 250. He has 1 home run, 6 RBIs. Cal Raleigh continuing to mash. He had a home run on Sunday in that win over the Marlins. Leads the team, actually still tied for the league lead as I tape this episode, but leads the team in home runs and RBIs. I mean, this team is fighting through. And resilience, really, that is the name of the Seattle Mariners right now, because they've lost 3 key contributors in the last week, on top of already losing 2 key contributors before that, and then started the season off with 1 key contributor down in George Kirby. They've called up 4 rookies. They've given significant playing time to new guys like Miles Mastrobuoni. They still have to give at bats to Donovan Solano, and they're winning games. I just love to see something positive happening in my Seattle Mariners clubhouse, and I am just so excited to see what the next couple of series brings as they hit the road again here after their wins against the Angels going into the month of May. Unfortunately, April is over. You wish the calendar wouldn't turn over at this point, but they have an off day Thursday the 1st and then start their series against the Rangers, 3-game set Friday the 2nd at 5 o'clock Pacific time. This team's hitting, though, is really looking more and more legitimate. What this week showed me is that they look like a major league ball club settling in at the plate, and we can actually expect some sustained success out of them in the batter's box as opposed to just that blip in the pan. They're battling. Jorge Polanco looks great. J.P. Crawford looks amazing. He's batting like .450 in his last 7 games. Randy Arozarena looking good. If those guys keep this up, watch out. And if Julio gets hotter than he is now, watch out. The Mariners, once again, doing this with all these players down, 2 starting pitchers down, no right fielder, essentially no first baseman, and they didn't start the season with a first baseman. They have to add somebody. Hopefully they do. I don't know where they're going to find it, but they have to add somebody. But even still, the Mariners are playing well despite all of that. Can they continue to win through all this adversity? I'm not sure. But dang, it's fun to watch. And that is going to do it for this episode of Bleav in Mariners. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be back here on Friday with an episode previewing the Rangers series, as well as hopefully an interview here on the show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Ride that success, and make sure if you're listening, you leave a review, hit that like and subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Leave a review on the Apple Podcast service or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps the show tremendously. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Keep those tridents up, Mariners fans. See you soon.